Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, where we have created a live discussion and community space that incorporates magic, spirituality, and energy, and a lot of amazing different topics, even down to the mundane. And we try to make each show unique, special, interesting, and today is no different. We will not disappoint because, as you will have noticed, we have a third person here today. Very special guest, Eric Rasbold.
Yeah.
Woo! And before we get too deep into our conversation today, which is on the topic of karma, we've brought it up before, but we're gonna have some new insight on the topic itself. But before we get too deep into that, we have some introductions to make, and like I rarely do, I'm gonna throw it over to Katrina first.
I also am going to punt because I'm really curious to see how Eric is going to introduce us.
He's
Okay,
going
all
to
right.
introduce you.
Both of us.
Oh,
The us.
Okay, well, depending on how your screen is oriented, Katrina's up there. She's my wife. And, well, gosh, we've been together forever, since the 1900s. And we are the creators of Crossroads Metaphysical, where we hand make wonderful magical products, everything for the mind, body, and soul, to bring energy, love, and light, and power and magic into your lives. And we've been doing that for a very, very long time, and pretty much have just lived a spiritual life the whole way through. So try to keep in tune with it and recognize what's going on and see what we can do to make our way through it and help the human condition make their way through it as well. So
I think
I'm
that's
good with
great.
that.
does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
great.
really good.
I could go through Katrina's accolades and resume, but I'll save that. She can do that.
Well, I'll keep it short and sweet as well. I'm Dahlia Rose, the founder of the Conduit School, and I serve my community as a healer and a teacher. And I do so by being a channel of high vibrational energies. And much like Eric and Katrina, I also serve the human condition. I really like the way you put that. Um, and attempting all of this because I believe that we need to expand the way that we think about healing, reconnect with our bodies, and feel empowered along the way. So with that, we are all here. We're here to talk, like I said, about a very interesting topic about karma. So in past shows, I've talked about how I believe in karma. Katrina does not. And now we have third insight. So Eric, what how do you define karma? What is it to
Well,
you?
I'm going to interject very quickly and just say it's not that I don't believe in karma. I'm open to the idea that exists. I do not see a huge amount of evidence of it
Ah,
in
okay.
in my practice, but I'm absolutely on board with the idea that it might be there. Now, this is a place where Eric and I, and it's one of many places actually, that our spiritual understandings are very different. And that's why I wanted to bring him into this conversation, because he is far more better positioned than I am to have the conversation about karma because of the things he has studied. So I just wanted to pop that in there and say it's not that I just don't believe it and have said it doesn't exist. It's that I just am not seeing the playing out of it. And Eric's probably going to have a lot to say about that. So
And thank you for the distinction. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
So karma, Eric, lead the way.
Karma. Well, so karma is one of those words that we got from a foreign, distant land. That it seems like everyone pretty much knows what it is, but not really, right? So, for example, linguistically, the word karma simply means action. Okay, it's from the Sanskrit root of kri, and it just means to do something. Okay, our first understanding of what karma is supposed to mean or what it all entails comes from the Rig Veda. probably about, gosh, I don't know. Let's see. What year is this? Probably about 4,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago. And they basically just describe karma as you do good things, you get good things. You do bad things, you get bad things. Okay. Now, as Hinduism evolved and their understanding of what they call the cycle of birth and death, the reincarnation, samsara, it's called. Um, Karma is really any time that you do something, say something, interact with this world in such a way that you are projecting energy out into it and affecting the world around you. Okay. That creates karma. Okay. Your action of doing and changing the world by interjecting your energy into it for good or ill creates the karma upon which you will be weighed or judged. Okay. There are a lot of different religions that kind of bring this idea into play. But from the Hindu perspective, basically your quality of rebirth will be judged based upon your actions, and only the actions that you put energy out into the world. So your thoughts, that does not create karma the way you think.
Mm.
Only how you project out into the world and affect the rest of the world. Um, our modern understanding of karma, at least when I hear people use it, it really comes down to what goes around comes around.
Right.
And that's not a bad way to look at it, to understand it. It's just not exactly correct. And there are some details we can get into, but that's how I like to look at karma. You know, is pretty much the letter of the law, you know, as far as the Hindus go and their scriptures are, that it is action that puts energy into the world and causes, you know, reactions to that energy, right? Good or bad.
That's excellent. So I wasn't aware of the thought piece, right? I mean, I just wrapped it all up into um, uh, thoughts being part of that karmic cycle, just on the basis of our thoughts can sometimes impact our actions, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but it's interesting to create the distinction. I think it's freeing to create that distinction because we're allowed some sovereignty over something. Like I can be pissed off in my head,
Right.
but as long as I don't go out in the world and act on it, then I'm not influencing my karma.
And that's one of the great lessons of being a human being is,
Right.
you know, if all of our thoughts translated into action, well, I mean, we probably wouldn't be here. We certainly wouldn't be using the internet or computers or even electricity. I don't think we would have gotten that far. So that discriminative faculty that is developed throughout a person's life to allow this energy that's in here to exit either through my mouth or my hands is one of our great lessons. So we're kind of given a pass on being judged on our thoughts.
A much needed pass.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. So as far as your teachings are concerned with karma and what you, oh, this is a great question. So you and Katrina do a lot of work to support others, and that includes spell work, making tools, healing tools. You yourself conduct sound healing and Reiki, and I know Katrina does Reiki as well. How does karma filter through those circumstances? Is that a clear question, or do you need me
for us or for the clients?
For you.
Oh. Well, so I can't speak to the mechanism of action upon which we are judged. You know, that's for that higher energy or God and God alone to decide how that's going to be weighed. But for example, when I do a Reiki healing, okay, my thoughts, words, actions, deeds, my heart is all about the healing of the other person. Okay,
Right.
to bring to them what they need to know, what they need to feel, or what they need to experience in order to get past traumas or blockages, things that may be holding them back, preventing them from a successful healing. Um, I do not judge what the other person may need or want in that particular session. Um, Karmically, I could only imagine in doing that, we are building up good karma for ourselves. But the one of the caveats to karma, to using karma, right? And this is in the Bhagavad Gita. The joy, the real gift, the privilege of mankind is in the work. It is not in the fruits of your labor. Okay, and that's an admonishment from Krishna to Arjuna to not be focused on what you might get out of doing these good things, right? A very light admonishment, but an admonishment nonetheless, to focus on the doing while you are able to do, because one day your chance for doing will be over.
Wow.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
It is heavy. It is heavy, and it's interesting. It's so interesting to see, because I'm a student of all religions, right? Well, okay, not all of them, but I mean many of them. As much as I can, and it seems like at least 3/4 of the human race have seemed to settle on a philosophy and a spiritual ideology that involves that very idea that your privilege in this life is the work that you are able to do, not that you might get to go to heaven because of it or be born again into a better station in life because of it. I think that's very interesting to see from an anthropological standpoint. Peoples that were separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years have come to that same kind of idea. Pretty interesting. That lends some credence to the idea as a whole.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think that is, at least for me, proof of our collective consciousness, right? The ways in which
Right.
we're connected, and then lending that collective consciousness piece to our conversation on karma, how we impact one another, how our actions have a ripple effect, whether we're standing in front of a person or someone we will eventually meet is impacted by our actions and the things that we do. So I saw Katrina over there scribbling some notes.
I am. I've got a mad list of questions here. So one of the things I would say to address the point that you brought up, Dahlia, I think tend to get my hands a little bit dirtier, if you want to say that, than Eric does. Eric's investment in our business and in our practice is almost exclusively from a healing perspective. I mean, he's just putting good out there. He does make our candles and our oils, and some of those have got intentions behind them that could be used in a negative way. For instance, if you have a doom candle or a GTFO candle or something like that, we can not always predict the outcomes that are going to show up based on how a client uses the tools that we sell.
Sure.
So if somebody sells a gun, they could use it to kill somebody on purpose, or they could use it to protect their home.
Right.
So we provide different types of candles for different types of work, different types of oils for different types of works. In my own practice, this was something I had a real struggle with, and Eric was there for me 100% in this conversation and this evolution as I worked through. At first, my thought was very much of, this is a person in need, and I'm right there beside them. I'm going to go to battle with them and do whatever they need. If they came to me, they were supposed to be my client, and I'm going to just balls to the wall, whatever they need. And as this began to play out over years, I began to get more and more uncomfortable with some of the things that my clients felt they needed.
Oh.
So sometimes they needed breakup work, or they needed somebody to lose their job, or things like that that really felt uncomfortable to me. And I would suggest alternatives, and they just were, no, this is what we're doing. And Eric was really instrumental in helping me come to a place where I could say, in my practice, I don't do that. And so as you know, my criteria is something justified or is it not justified?
Right.
And if a client is coming to me with spell work they want done, that I can look objectively at the situation as they have presented it to me, because of course I can never see the whole picture, or I could read cards on it or whatever it might be, and it doesn't feel that what they're wanting to do is justified, I will not take the case. And the reason I don't is exactly what Eric said, that this is not an energy or action that I feel comfortable putting out there into the world. Now I won't do breakup magic. I won't do magic that is intended to specifically bring harm to or even kill somebody else. It's weird how many people come to you asking you to magically kill somebody. That happens all the time.
Right.
And they get very upset when I won't be their energetic hitman and try to kill this person. So as far as if you want to call it karma, for my own ethical framework, I have to feel justified in what I'm doing. And when we look at various religious constructs, I was combining spiritual and religious there. We see that there are variances in beliefs, even in the same church, even in the same type of practice, as to what's okay and what's not.
Right.
Different interpretations of scripture can be, widely different. So my feeling is it's very difficult to have a consensus on what is right and what's wrong. And that's a place also where Eric and I differ in our beliefs, because he believes in a baseline morality that is an understood contract kind of between people. Did I express that well, honey? Would you say that's true?
A general social contract.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I think that shifts all the time. So that's a place that we don't have the same
I think it's a poorly written contract. With
lots
of caveats and
yeah.
So, right.
As far as my own practice and what Eric and I put out there into the world, the energy of that, it has to go through my filter of, is this okay or is this not okay? And if it's made it through that, then I'm comfortable putting that energy out there. So, but yeah, I do have lists here. I've got lists. One of the things I have is I was going to ask Eric, where does the karma come from in terms of the judgment? Is it about that universal understanding? Is it something divine? Or is it about how the person feels about what they're doing?
So before going into that, and this will touch on it, about that social contract, okay, that baseline morality. I think that everyone on the planet knows the difference between right and wrong. They just do. I mean, there may be a few people out there that can't put themselves in another person's shoes, but when you punch someone in the face, you can imagine what it's like to get punched in the face, right? I mean, you can put yourself there. You know that is probably not the right thing to do, unless it is, of course. And with that universal idea of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, I think gives rise to the idea of there's got to be some kind of balancing somewhere of all of the action that happens on this earth. Okay, there has to be. We don't know that there is, but we just feel it intuitively. At least I do, and it seems that most of the world does. If you look at the scriptures of a lot of the religions out there, that at some point this is going to be weighed out. At some point, the idea of, as you have meted, so shall it be meted unto you, is going to ring true at some point, whether it's this life or the next, or in some eternal divine existence after, we don't know, but everyone kind of holds fast to that. And I think it's a human way, whether it's divinely inspired or not, but a very human way of understanding the injustice that appears on the surface of this world without recourse, right? we see all the horrible things that are happening. It's like, surely there must be the ledger has got to balance to zero at some point. And maybe that is where the real origin of the idea of karma comes from. Okay, that even many thousands of years ago, we've struggled with looking around and seeing, nations of starving children, and the oppressors and the oppressed and the slaves and the just, God, just the sheer inadequacy of what the earth provides to human beings sometimes. Okay. Look at that. And this is our way of rationalizing that. Okay. And maybe that feeling, that collective unconscious feeling of where is this justice? Well, maybe there is a justice maker, and the thinking on that and contemplating and meditating on that idea may have given rise to that divine inspiration of, hey, this wheel of samsara is true. Okay, the reconciliation does happen at some point, and it makes people feel good to think that might be the case. Ultimately, hey, we don't know. We just don't know that, because we don't generally get to see other people get theirs. We even have a candle for that. Okay, so we do see people get theirs. It's the instant karma candle, right? And in our own lives, a lot of times we may not, as a species, possess the kind of self reflection to really see the result of our bad actions. Sometimes, certainly not if they're coming from a past life. How can you see that, right? So, where does it come from? I think it's a mix of the inborn feelings and outward desires of human beings as a whole, of wanting that.
I can see that.
Every society has judges, right? We need some kind of outside mediator to tell us when we did right or did wrong. Whether the heart or the letter of the law. And spiritually as a whole, we look to a God figure for that, or some kind of universal intelligence that can help us balance those scales and reconcile those books at the end of the day or the end of your life. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
It does.
I might have missed a part of it. I'm sorry.
No, you did good.
You did got it.
You did good. I struggle with that, because I feel, and yes, I see the clarity and the impact of what you're saying. In practical application, I feel like that is kind of a fairy tale that people want to believe. People really want to believe that when there's injustice, somewhere along the line, they're going to get theirs. The idea that somebody could come into the world and spend their entire life, or adult life usually, inflicting harm on others, creating misfortune to their own advantage, whatever it might be, and then just die happy in their bed as a millionaire and fulfilled, and have nothing happen for that, is repugnant to people. So I almost feel like they invented some idea so that they can sleep at night that, oh yeah, they're going to get theirs. I think too, what I see, and I know Dahlia saw this and you saw this in the shop, we see a lot of people that come in talking about terrible things that were done to them. And they'll say things like, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm just going to let karma take care of that. Or, I believe in karma. I believe in karma. So it's going to get them. It has teeth. It's going to get them. And I think sometimes they use that as an excuse not to do the heavy lifting themselves. I think they don't want to go file that restraining order. They don't want to make that lawsuit. They don't want to confront that person. They don't want to, and not that you should always confront an abuser, but there are circumstances like with a boss. I'll have somebody a boss is clearly showing favoritism to another employee. Rather than write out a lucid statement showing what this is inappropriate, this is what's happening, they want me to burn a candle for it so they don't have to step up. Mm-hmm. And so I see a lot of people not wanting to get their hands dirty and just saying karma's going to take care of it. And to me, that's kind of buying into that fairy tale of I don't have to do anything to make my own life better because karma's going to take care of it. So I could go both ways on that, I think.
I can see
Yeah,
where like the fairy tale piece comes in, and how, because our collective are like, when the collective believes in something, it's powerful and it gets legs, and it gets it, that energy becomes sort of woven into the fabric of who we are as human beings. And so I can see where we created the wheel of karma. um, at the same time, in like your example of the person that gets to live their life consequence free and then die happy, I think I haven't seen evidence of that. You know, I mean, even those people on their dying bed had to amputate some part of their life in order to maintain perceived happiness, and so that amputation, they don't get the wholeness that we believe um, is possible if karma is balanced. Do you know? Does that make sense? So they have to give to the wheel of samsara in some way
yeah.
in
I
order to exist.
I always had this feeling, and I mean, it's gonna sound kind of silly, but you ever play Dungeons and Dragons? You ever play, you know, when you like you roll the dice, and now okay, I haven't done this since like the 80s, okay, but you roll the dice and you get like a certain number of points for each of the traits that you can have. You got traits of strength and health and charisma and whatever, just magic power, whatever. Like, but you only have a maximum number that you can use as an individual character. You got to divide it up somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay. It's always a trade off. And, you know, and unless you look really deeply on it, it's kind of hard to see. But like you said, you know, you're going to have someone who, okay, you know what? Hey, I could look at the life of the Queen of England, right? Look at the Queen of England. Okay. What a, what a cool life would that be? How awesome would that be, man? You're traveling around to your castles. You're in charge of the entire Commonwealth. Everyone loves you. You never have to worry about money. You got all these kids and fame and blah 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 blah. In the Queen's own biography, okay, that I read some years ago, all she wanted to be was an auto mechanic. I swear to God, she didn't want to be a queen. She didn't want a public life. She wanted her husband, her kids, you know, some kind of work and a quiet life away.
Mm.
Okay. And her uncle took that from her. Right. So, unless you see what you're trading, what might truly make you happy. Now, do I think she was pissed being the queen? Probably not. I don't know.
No.
You know, but that's the point. We don't know. You know, we look at, you know, you look at rock stars and actors and stuff like that and billionaires talking about how sad and empty their lives and homes are, you know, committing suicide. You know, we don't know their road. We only know our road. Okay. And from our perspective, you know, when you look at things like you talk about injustices that you can't do anything about, okay, you don't need to look any further than our government and the corruption that's in there. I mean, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. Not even trying to hide it anymore. And it's like, wow, when is someone going to go to jail? When are they going to get theirs? Well, you know what? We don't know their road. We don't know their experiences. We don't know what maybe the good things we see that they're getting, the money, the fame, the power, pales in comparison in their from their own perspective to the trials that they've had to deal with, the children that they've lost to cancer, things like that, right? You know, we don't see a lot of that. It's kind of hard to judge. So I just try to look at it from my own perspective that human life does seem to be a trade-off of attributes. When do you roll these dice? I don't know. There are some religions that believe in premortal existence, you know, and where you do that kind of thing, you make that deal to go down to earth. Okay. Um, and I can only see it from there. I can't take a view of everything else that's going on and make judgments from that. I'm just not that good.
You know, as you're talking, I'm reminded of a psychologist that I had one time that now he quoted these things. I've never seen them written anywhere else. He quoted them as though they were established fact. And I was very young at the time and just believed that it was. But he talked about the laws of existentialism.
Mhm.
And I've been all over the internet trying to find evidence of these things he posited, and I can't find it. So he may have just made this shit up. I don't know. But for the laws of existentialism, I have referred back to those so many times in the last 40 years or so since I heard them. And they really ring true to what you're saying, honey, is one is that you cannot have everything all at once. That there is not a human existence you're going to have where everything you need, everything you want is provided to you at one specific time. That even by the random laws of chaos theory, that there will be something missing. The next one is that you cannot have everything sequentially. That even one thing after another, after another, after another, you're not going to likely be able to experience everything you always wanted or needed in a lifetime, one right after another, after another. And the last thing was that every experience is bittersweet, because in order to get anything, you always have to give up something. It's that equal and opposite reaction. You know, if you go in and you get chocolate and vanilla ice cream, you are not getting, butter pecan and mint chocolate chip. I mean, you're always giving up something when you get something. And that really made me think of those things as part of the human existence.
Yeah, it is. There's always a trade-off, and you're always going to lament the things that you don't have. I mean, it's okay for me to commute into the city, make $400,000 a year, but I would never see my family. Right? I mean, it's always like that. It's always going to be like that, and that's another part of our human experience. I mean, it seems like I have actually known people that it seems like their entire life was a sacrifice for other people, other missions, other ideas, everything except for themselves, and then they died, and how does that look to an outsider? It looks like they got ripped, man, but how was it to them? It was a privilege for them to serve, so I mean it's the trade-offs, and it's also perspective, so yeah, it's weird. But the karma thing, what I have a hard time with karma, and this comes into the spiritual beliefs too, as far as pre-mortal, post-mortal existence, right? How do you tell someone that maybe the reason their life sucks or they're going through this particular time is because of some karma that they accumulated in past lives? How do you say that to somebody?
I can tell you. I can answer that.
Can you?
I was going to say you don't.
I can.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
How
I
do
didn't
you
interrupt
tell
you.
someone that successfully? Okay.
Because there are so many people. Now, I've counseled hundreds and hundreds of people over the years that people don't come to the local witch when their life is going well. Okay, they don't come in and say, you know what, I've been blessed. I have a ton of money. My kids are successful and happy. I'm in a great marriage. I love what I do every day of my life. I would like to become a better person. Let's do some magic for that. Nobody does that. They come when the ship is sinking and they've been bailing for the last month and they want me to hoist it back up and get it seaworthy again. They come at the last possible moment. And so I see a lot of people who are in real distress. They would rather hear that what they're going through is due to things that happen in their past life than to believe that it's because of their own bad choices.
Okay.
I can see that.
That's
I
my
definitely
answer.
had conversations where it's like, oh, okay, well, now everything makes sense because in this lifetime I did this, in this lifetime but oftentimes I guess my conversations are of the bend that it wasn't something they did. It was something, it may have been a decision that they made, but it wasn't like they were Hitler in another life. And so now they have to endure.
You got it.
I haven't had that conversation yet. I'm waiting, eager to have it.
I wanted, just real quick, you have a comment here from Christy Price. Okay. And what's interesting about this is, this was just what we were talking about here. She's got to believe in some kind of karma because she doesn't see any evidence of this person getting what they probably deserve, right? Keeps falling up. Okay. I'll tell you what a man told me. This is from a Christian perspective. Okay. The guy who told me this is he's probably 85 now. He's been a preacher his whole life from West Virginia. And he was one of our neighbors when we lived in Grizzly Flat. Good friend of mine. I'd go over to his house. We'd drink coffee and just talk religion, hundreds of hours accumulated, I'm sure. And I was going through a particularly hard time in my life where I had a pretty young family, and a big family and a big mortgage. And, I was commuting 2 hours each way to work. And I mean, just like the story goes, man, uphill both ways, 10 feet of snow, the whole thing, right? And I got these neighbors that live next to me, and they're having just drunken parties all night long, every night. I'm over here busting my ass to pay my mortgage and keep, food on the table. And these guys are living right next to me, just partying like there's no tomorrow. And I go to Frank and I'm like, man, this just doesn't seem fair. Okay. I'm breaking myself over here doing the right thing. And I got these assholes over here just living it up like it's nothing. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Why I got to listen to that music and I got to go over there all the time and tell them to shut up because I got to get up in 3 hours to go to work, that kind of thing. And he said, this is from a Christian perspective. And he said, what you got to understand is that Satan already has them. Satan already has them. Okay. So yeah, let them party it up, man. They already lost the war. They lost the game. Okay. And that's why they get to be like that. And although I don't quite believe in that way, I can understand the idea of when a person has just given up on trying to be better, do better, influence the world in a positive way, they might look like they're having a good time. Okay. When they just go forward and say, you know what, I'm going to step on everyone's necks to get ahead. I'm going to cut everyone off in traffic and give them the finger while I'm doing it, just so I can get it. Yeah, you might enjoy some of this world, or at least appear as if you are to outside people. But the truth is, you already lost the game. Okay, so the antagonistic forces that might be against the people who are trying to do good, and we've talked about this, Katrina and I, for a very long time, they're absent in that person's life. They're gone. We don't need to antagonize that person anymore because they already lost. We already know where they're going. That kind of thing. I thought that was interesting. It's an interesting way to think about it.
Absolutely. And to Christy's comment, Katrina and I have talked, when we talked on this subject, I was kind of theorizing that the reason it appears as though these individuals don't suffer is because they lack guilt. Mm-hmm. So, the things that would kind of maybe torture them from the inside out about how they mistreat others and things like that just don't exist, or maybe those nerve endings are, burned off. And so they just kind of go on about life and may get hit by multiple things. And they're just like, oh, well, this is what happens. They don't feel the guilt that's like, oh, this is happening because of the things that I've done or the things that I've said. So even from that perspective, it doesn't necessarily seem like they're thriving because they're not able to enjoy all that is being human. But on the outside, it seems like they're not suffering. And I think that's an important, like going right back to what you were saying earlier, we can't tell that they're not suffering. We just don't know their road. We are sort of suffering watching them, hoping that they would fall, trip, break something, lose something. Yeah. And because it's not visible. I mean, how many politicians, to your point, are sick? They've got to take time. I think it was, I don't want to say names because I don't even remember his name, but he just came back from like falling and breaking something. And he had to suffer for a period of time. Who's to say that wasn't karma for something that he said or did?
And how much worse is it with social media? Right. I mean, what do you see of people's lives? Do you see that, hey, I can't afford to pay electricity this month? Unless there's a link to a GoFundMe somewhere, you're not going to see that kind of stuff. Okay, you're going to see the beaches and the drinks and the meals and the whatever, man. I mean, you're going to see a facade, a front, a front thing. And that makes it a lot harder if you're trying to see how someone's doing. You know what I mean? You hop on their Facebook
That
page.
being
And
the
go,
case, that being the case, sweetheart. Now we talked about past lives, reenacting or balancing karma in a current life. Do you think that there's also then same life karma where?
yeah.
You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. And there's actually, so this is something I meant to bring up before. As far as karma, okay, so back to the linguistics of it. Okay, karma is the action. Okay, what happens as a result of that karma is called phala. Okay, it's transliterated phala, right? Phala, like there's So the phala can come in two forms. Okay, it can either be seen, they call it drishta phala, or unseen, adrishta phala, right? The drishta phala is the reaction of your karma or the recompense of your actions that you are aware of in this life from this life. Okay, so you may not be specifically aware of the things that you have done that have caused that to happen, but those are things that are brought back to you to be balanced out in this life for something that is for an action that happened in this life. The adrishta karma is one where you cannot see its source. You cannot even divine its source because it came from a past turn on the wheel of samsara. So, yeah.
That's interesting. It kind of gives us like pause when we feel a karmic something happening, or when like if I'm doing a reading or something like that, I'm going to be like, well, because I can see it, it could be this life as opposed to.
Yeah, you can read a lot about that in the Upanishads. If you're into, most people know the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yes.
The Upanishads are really like the knowledge, right? Like if you want to know, this is what you want to read, that kind of thing. In fact, it's funny. The word Upanishad means "come forth to be destroyed." Is what the word means, right? So come forth to this knowledge. I will destroy what you have known and replace it with truth. That type of thing, that idea, right? So in the Upanishads, it talks a lot about the adrishta and drishtapala and how that is manifested and why. And one of the things that I do when I do Reiki is there are certain Reiki practices that its intent is to bring forth some of the pala to you immediately. Okay, so you can try to balance out in this life as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Okay, and it's usually older people that want that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay.
Because at the end of life.
Yeah. Or at least, I think for everyone, there's something that happens, or there is, maybe you get to a certain age where there's fewer years ahead than there are behind, that kind of thing, where you are absolutely convinced of your own mortality. Like, it's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're younger, you kind of can't see it. It's weird. But everyone makes that transition. And when you do make that transition and you have some spiritual understanding and have a desire to set these scales straight, that's when you really try to work that out, try to balance out as much as you can. Those are the people I see coming to that kind of practice.
We did have a comment here from Elsbeth. Sorry to backtrack a bit. Was driving. Leaving something to karma is fine, but that doesn't mean it absolves you from necessary work. There's always work on all things in my way of looking at it. Absolutely. 100%. I mean, I don't see a space in life where there isn't work to be done. I mean, even holding space for someone else to move through. Have you guys ever had that experience where you felt like there was some karma playing out and it was just your job to just be there? And
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but that takes work, right? I mean, and from my vantage point, you're doing work not to create or not to add on or not to respond. and that is, it's a bitch.
I think that, yeah, I mean, even though, now remember what we said before, you're not judged on your thoughts,
Right.
okay? But you are judged on your actions or lack thereof. I mean, anytime you have agency in something, your decision to do or not do is part of that agency. So, if you witness some kind of injustice or something and you have the power to stop it or correct it and you don't, well, you might find yourself in a similar situation with a bystander that just doesn't help you out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it can be looked at like that. So, yeah, doing nothing also creates that action, that lack of action.
Or if you're yelling at the Starbucks barista for getting your drink wrong,
Oh,
and then you will get
yeah.
yelled at by someone else for something trivial and small. I mean, it's not always that even, right? But
it's not. But when you look back, and all of us are at least over 40 here, okay? So, huh?
She's not over 40.
You're not?
no.
How dare you not be over 40?
I did her birth chart. I know.
Oh, shit. I should have looked at that. Sorry.
No. I mean, I look great, right?
No, you do. You do. I can't. I just assumed that. But
you stepped in it, honey, but you got pretty feet, okay?
Check it out. Everyone here is far enough along the path, okay, to
There you
understand that how we behaved and acted in a way, when we were younger, okay, like you talk about yelling at the barista. Man, I mean, I could think back to all the times that I was just a prick, like a prick,
same.
man, and it helps that I've had a lot of things happen to me that were similar to that to make me understand, and not continue that kind of behavior, and to go forth with a more, a bit more equipoise, in my words, especially. That's very important. Very important. Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate that.
We know that biologically speaking, people can be damaged psychologically by ongoing exposure to violence or being put into a circumstance where what comes to mind, and this is completely, fictional and off base, but zombie apocalypse or things like that. We could be put in situations where we would do things that in normal life we would consider to be wrong. There's also people, so that would almost be a nurture response. So your environment, something's happening in your environment to take away or change what you perceive as wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. And we've got the nature part that we know that there are people that are psychopaths or sociopaths who don't have the ability to formulate any kind of empathy or compassion. What do you think how does karma play out for people who, for whatever reason, don't have the capacity to evaluate their behavior?
It might sound kind of harsh, but maybe you just got to come back. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously, for some people, even if you don't have empathy for others, and again, I mean, this is going to be kind of hard because I can only speak from my own perspective, but I've asked enough people that I think I know the answer. So let me ask you all, when you're about to do something, more specifically, when you're about to say something, okay, so your thoughts become flesh, okay, you get this feeling in your gut when you know that this is going to be the wrong thing to say. Does that happen to y'all? Like, you might say it anyway, but you know it's the wrong thing, right? Sometimes you get an instant response. I'll give you a funny example. When I was in the military, I got in a little trouble, and I had to lie to one of my flight chiefs about something to try to keep me out of, immediate pain. Okay, so like I was looking for instant gratification, not thinking about the long-term stuff. And when I got busted on that, my commander called me into his office. He said, Airman, why he was cussing a lot, but why did you lie to this guy, right? And I looked at him, and I got that feeling in my stomach, man. This is the wrong thing to say, but I said it anyway. I said, I just didn't want to hear it, right? You imagine saying that to your commander? You just didn't want to hear it, and he got up from his desk and he looked at me and said, "Boy, you gonna hear it now, ain't you?" And it was all bad. It was all bad, and it lasted a long time. Sometimes you get it immediately like that. Okay, and to be fair, I was 18 years old when this happened. Okay, shit, I think I might have been 17. Sorry about the language. I might have been 17, but I was young, and I needed that. I needed that verification within myself because I wasn't a really self-aware person. I didn't know what that feeling meant. It was just not a good feeling in my stomach. What does that mean? And then here comes these words, and here comes that instant response. It's like, oh, that's what that is. Now, did I correct my behavior right then? Hell no. I had to experience that dozens of more times in my life. Okay, so even for a person who doesn't have empathy to feel what another person may feel, I think within ourselves we have that. We have that measure because, like I said, I think that other than the most sociopathic, psychopathic people, we have what they call that inborn knowledge. Christians have a term for it, like what the law of God written on your heart or something. Muslims call it the fitra, right? That's written on the heart before birth. I think we all have that knowledge of what's right and wrong. Some of us just can't see enough to just shut up or not do that thing. They just do it anyway for whatever reason that may be. I'm trying. Ooh,
Eric, look who's here.
Hey, it's
Sally.
So the comment is, or to that point, what happens when the person does develop self-awareness and genuinely repents and changes their ways? Do they cleanse their karma, or are they forever on the hook? That's a great question.
Okay, my thoughts on that. So I would hope that people who are on this path have an ever-evolving idea of increasing their self-awareness and all those things, growing in that fashion. So I think just doing that could certainly be beneficial to whatever is owed on that balance book at the end of, whatever the reconciliation period is. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid religion-specific concepts, okay? But one of the goals of meditation, real yoga, like true yoga, is the self-identification and spiritual identification with that universal consciousness. It is through that pursuit that things are brought into your life purposefully and in a directed way to help absolve you of as much bad karma or the pala that may return to you as possible, because its goal is that final liberation, or the moksha, right? The unification with that supreme consciousness. And you unify with that supreme consciousness when your karma debt is settled, when it is completely erased, where you are no longer, when you don't have any of this karma that's going to keep you on that cycle of death and rebirth. That is the moment when you become liberated and you are kind of removed from that system. Okay. So yeah, I think being put on a path of self-awareness is definitely going to help that. I don't think there's any way that it can hurt that. Right. Will it result in that final liberation? I mean, gosh, that could take many, many lifetimes, if that's your system of belief. But so, yeah, I guess is my answer. I'm sorry. Kind of going off a lot.
I think it's like probably too complicated to say with absoluteness that, yeah, okay, now that you're self-aware, your karma's cleansed. I mean, that's like the assumption of walking down the street. Oh, I squished this bug, but the thousands of smaller bugs that you can't see are now under your shoe as well. There's it. Whatever we do, our actions and the ripple effect that they cause, it's too complicated to say, okay, well, now that I'm aware of it, now I'm on the path of healing and cleansing, and I may not have to do this life again. I think it's far too complicated. It's never just a one-to-one, at least not that I've seen.
I think the
I think
awareness
a
is
lot
really
of times.
important. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. He and I, we
No, it's
have a
cool.
delay.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say that, the Maya Angelou quote that you did what you knew to do, and when you knew better, you did better. I think that the knowledge is almost like eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Once you have consequences of your actions, as you did, hon, or you become aware, self-aware, to the point that you're saying, okay, that was really bad. That thing I did 5-6 years ago was horrible. I shouldn't have done that. You then become on the hook for sure if you do it again, because you did it with the knowledge that it was wrong. The other side of it too, I would think, is that those actions never go away. The consequences for those actions go away. You were horrible. You threw a friend under the bus. That friend now does not speak to you. That's a consequence. You may not ever be able to repair that relationship. But what I would wonder is if you pay it forward, so to speak, which is actually paying it backward, and did good things on purpose, is that then violated because you are doing it for your own benefit rather than for the experience?
Seems tarnished, doesn't it? Because it's selfish.
So on the outside, you're saying, okay, I did terrible things, so I'm going to be a good person now. I'm going to work hard to be a good person. And so anybody, and talk about outside perceptions again, anybody looking at that person would go, wow, they really turned their life around. They were a lifelong criminal. They harmed a lot of people, but now they're doing ministry in the prisons and are turned their life around. But on the inside, their motivations for why they're doing that might be suspect.
Yeah, that's definitely the finding God in prison thing. You see a lot of that, and I again, I mean, I can't speak for anybody, but I do think that a lot of people have the grave misunderstanding of Christianity and what it's about. They really do think that they can just believe in Jesus Christ and my soul is saved and I was baptized again and I went forth and sinned no more and now I'm going to get into heaven. That's not even what it says in the Bible, like not even kind of, right? So uh, good luck with that. I mean, I think that you will have to answer for everything that has been done. I mean, you can do bad things with good intent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we went off to war, we killed a lot of people. That's what happened. That's what we were doing, right? We weren't doing something else. We were there to kill people and we killed people, right? So that's a bad thing if you just look at the idea of killing, but is it justified? I mean, could that be, classified as doing bad things for good reasons? I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out, So it's hard. It's really hard to wrap our heads around this because for one thing, we're dealing with an ephemeral philosophical and spiritual concept, and second, we cannot. There is no way that as human beings we can remove ourselves from our animal nature. We have to kill to eat. We do. We do it all the time, and that's just part of what life is. So it's kind of hard to live in that environment, but then try to have this spiritual philosophy where we're just super holy and harm none and totally self-aware and I'm sitting on the mountain and just living off the every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord kind of thing. I don't know. It's just it's really weird. I think the best that we can hope for is to just try not to be a jerk. Just really try and it's hard. It's hard. I can hear a lot of people talking here. You know what I mean? And it's rough. And then of course, where are we at? We're coming from the perspective. We're in the United States of America, right? Hey, how hard is that? Right? It's not too hard. What do other people think about this? People in that are in Syria right now. What are they thinking about karma? about their past lives, why they're in this predicament, this situation. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it would be better if we could all just try to be a little better, and if that doesn't get it at the end of the day, well, whoever that judge and master is, we can plead our case, like, hey, wish we had more information.
You should have left the instruction book.
You should have left yeah.
I left the Bible. I left the Bible.
It's like Bible is literally an acronym for basic instructions before leaving Earth. What part didn't you get?
The part where they chopped it up and took sections out. That part.
Yeah. But I think that, if anyone understands anything about karma, it's really that at some point, somehow, somewhere, you will either answer now or answer later. That's really how I look at it. And that's really just that's how I try to live it. That's how I try to live it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But nobody knows for sure. So I think
that one of the interesting, maybe at least what I see of you here talking about it, what's interesting to me is there's no place of like, okay, well, I'm a little scared of what could come from my actions. It's like, no, I'm going to do the best that I can. And then moving forward from that is how I live. And I think that's something that all of us could kind of take away from this experience, whether you have the belief system or the background and learning of karma, or if you just kind of follow it as a theory. Mm-hmm. If you are doing the best that you can and, living your life in a way that brings balance, and in most of your situations, maybe not all, you're probably going to land on a good foot.
I would think
everybody,
so. Yeah.
Welcome to our living room. This is what it's like having been talking to Eric for 27 years now. And sometimes we're sitting and watching TV with our mouths open. And a lot of times we're having these kinds of conversations.
I think this is great. I think this is brilliant. I think we need to have you come back on another topic.
Definitely.
Especially, I was nerding out at all the language around karma. So I you come back.
That is
how I knew I was out of my element.
One thing I love and I respect about the Hindu culture and yoga and all that is not just that it's been going on for many thousands of years. I mean, it predates a lot of the stuff that we have. But the fact that we did not go out and get their religion, they came to us. They brought it to us, man. Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Yogananda, these people, they specifically traveled to America to spread the idea of the yoga and how to attain that liberation. And just that idea, which it's just so crazy how it echoed some of the philosophies that we already, like Christianity and Islam, okay, that we already had going on. It's like, my God, this is like, it's like every deep thinker, okay, thinks this way. They all kind of arrived at a similar conclusion, not same, but very similar. And it's like, it's got to be true. It has to be, like with the rice. You ever see the movie Lost Boys, right? He's got the rice, and he's like, hey, how can 1 billion people be wrong? It's got to be true, right?
Right. I do love how inviting the Hindu culture is, and it makes me, I guess it's not surprising to me that we all kind of arrive at the same conclusion because of how old Hinduism is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the younger religions borrowed. I mean, they, how do we understand this thing without undoing other beliefs that we've set in place? Okay, well, let me, pull from here, move through this. This sounds good, So I guess on that front, it doesn't seem surprising to me. At the same time, we can't, it's one of those things that doesn't seem to, like, the more they find of the Bible with like the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is different. We translated this wrong.
Right.
That has not happened in Hinduism. So, yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah. I'm no Hindu scholar. That's, for sure. I was a disciple of Yogananda's for a long time. I've read some of their texts. I've studied the language a little bit. But that's really the end of my credentials. So, if that has happened, I'm not aware of it. So,
Well, me neither.
yeah.
But before we get too deep on another topic, because we're supposed to end the show.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So we'll definitely have you back for another session,
Okay.
another episode. This has been wonderful. You guys need to watch the replay, if nothing more, for the understanding of what karma actually is, and then taking that knowledge as an opportunity to reevaluate how you look at the world. I mean, it's a new moon, guys, and there's a solar eclipse. This is the opportunity to do new shit. Sorry. So take this episode as your first step. Reevaluate how you interact with the world, and your own belief systems. How much of what is old within you lines up with what we were talking about, and can you expand, and all the things. So back in the fridge we go for now until next week, and we will catch you all next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Good night, everybody.
Right.